Hello, friend, and welcome to Season 2, Episode number 11 of the VIP Collective. I am your host, Corinne McDonald, and on today's episode, my guest is Ellie Martires Creative Director with Laura & Co. Events. On today's episode, Ellie and I discuss her journey into wedding planning, how important it is to understand both fashion and design when executing your client's vision, and the ideal time for your first dance. There are a lot of takeaways, so buckle up and let's go, because this is my conversation with Ellie Martires of Laura & Co. Events. Darling.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good.
Thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
I am very excited to have you in today.
Okay, good. I've been super excited too.
Good.
I'm a big podcast girl, so.
Are you?
Yeah.
You're a listener or you're a watcher?
Both.
Mm-hmm.
I think like over the past year I've really I've found podcasts, and we spend a lot of time on the road as planners going to and from meetings, so just to put them on in the background and absorb is awesome.
Yeah. It's always
so
nice to listen and learn while you're driving.
Yeah, exactly.
Hear what everybody's up to and everybody in Toronto.
Make it productive.
People you know. So today we are going to chat all about planning.
Yes.
Yay.
Yay.
And so we've been on shoots together, both creative and weddings.
Yeah.
And it's always super fun.
Super fun. We love working with you.
And you're always so chill, and you've just got your shit together every time.
Really?
Yeah.
That's nice to hear.
That's what I see when I work with you.
Oh, I love that. I get that a lot from people, that I'm very calm and collected, but you know how it is on event days. Sometimes it's not always easy.
Well,
but
exactly. That's the thing.
Yeah.
And the secret is staying calm and collective, and you just bring like a very calm energy. So
thank you.
I think you should know that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I appreciate that.
So for everyone who is listening and watching, we are with Ellie Martires. And why don't you give us a bit of background first?
Okay.
So when did you
Sounds
start, and how did it
So
unfold?
I have been with Laura & Co. now for 8 years. I'm one of the creative directors of the company. I started as an assistant, working my way up to a lead planner, and now being one of the creative directors. Before I was with Laura, actually going back even a step further, I have a fashion background. So I went to Ryerson University for fashion.
That makes total sense, because every time I see you, you're rocking something, and I'm like, damn girl.
Thank you.
So
I tried to match today. I knew what
that.
the set looked like, and I was like, oh, I was just gonna go for it. So
You've done well.
So I went to Ryerson University, and part of my program was to do 400 hours of internship. So I actually interned with a wedding planner who used to be in Toronto and now is in LA. So I was with her for about a year. It wasn't completely the right fit for me, but I did get a strong sense of the wedding industry, and I knew that I fell in love with it. And it was actually Lexi from Paper and Post. So we went to Ryerson together. She told me about the opening at Laura & Co. And I interviewed, it was back in the day, it was Laura and Kelly.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, they brought me on. I assisted a couple weddings, and almost immediately Laura was like, you should be doing your own thing. So it's been great. It's been 8 years now.
So you've been on the team with Laura for 8 years.
Yes. Yeah.
And how long was your internship before that?
About a year. And I was working at it throughout university, and then once I was finished school, it was about 6 months afterwards. And you know, she was an incredible planner. She had an incredible design eye. I learned a lot about, you know, what not to do in the industry as well, and just, you know, developed relationships with different vendors, and I kind of took that into my world with Laura. So yeah.
What do you think? Do you have any memories? Because I know when I first started editing, so I started as an editor, and then I became a shooter, and there were some key moments for Bruce, when I was working with Bruce, that he would say something and it would stick with me. And to this day when I'm editing, I still think, oh yeah, don't forget that little piece of advice that he had given. Is there something that she gave you a long time ago on like a first event that you're kind of stood out and you were like, that's a piece that you still remember on an event in today's?
That's a good question. I think it goes back to, again, like what we just talked about, being calm, cool, and collected. I think it's so important that you always remain that way in front of a bride and groom, because their days are already pretty crazy, overwhelming. So if they get a sense from you that your energy is very stressed out, or you don't really have the answer, I think that will just elevate their stress and elevate whatever the situation is. So that was always a really good piece of advice that I took. Like, don't ever let them know that, even if you are freaking out on the inside, don't let anyone else know
that you're shook.
So so I've kind of taken that with me, and I've carried that through in everything I do.
Do you meditate or do anything? You do?
I meditate. I do yoga every day. I actually, Laura's going to kill me for talking about this, but I sage my events.
Yeah.
So I've just done that in the past year. Honestly, I find it makes such a difference. Like, I'm really big on energies and all of that. So, and I think, there's something to be said about, I think that I attract clients that also have good energy for the most part, and want to work with somebody that is calm and picks up on things like that. So I think it's important to me to stay that way.
It makes sense. I pegged you as a yogi.
Did you?
Just
not a lot of people do.
Really?
I think from like just the way that, again, like my fashion background and the way that I carry myself, but that's nice to hear. I try and take it into my day-to-day. So
do you still practice anything in like, there is an element of fashion with the wedding industry, especially on creative shoots, right?
Yes.
Is that kind of when you get to flourish and shine?
Yes.
Is that your favorite?
It's my favorite. I love shoots. I wish I could do them, every month. They really are my creative outlook. And I think as a planner in this day and age, you have to have that design background. Yeah. And it used to be you would hire a planner and you'd hire a designer. But now I think that the two are very much one. And I think it's important to be able to build a floor plan, but also design it in a way that's whatever your client wants. So I think if you look at our portfolio and our Instagram, there's no distinct style. And that's really what I love about it. People will always say, brides and grooms in initial meetings will be, what's your style? It's like, my style is whatever your style is, because I'm just here to execute what your vision is and give my advice based off of my design background. So when it comes to shoots, it's just like free reign, right? And I love that. And you're able to just design whatever it is that you're envisioning in your mind. And sometimes you don't get that opportunity with a bride and groom. So, and I like to carry my design and fashion background into it as well, like with the dresses and the styling. And I love that part of shoots. And
So when you get the email that gives you the theme for the shoot, then how do you go about starting to figure out what you want to do?
Good question. I think, sometimes we've actually tried, especially when it comes to wedlock shoots, we don't always choose or select one that they give us. So they usually give a bunch of different palettes, and we like to take our own spin on it. But I think the key starting point is just trying to, obviously finding a venue first that fits within the palette and the design board, and then just like heavily diving into Instagram, Pinterest, magazines, former shoots. We like to look at past shoots and make sure that we're not repeating anything. Dress design and styling is a huge piece in that as well. We like to take inspiration from that, especially me. Like, that's usually where I start, is like, okay, we have this palette, like, what's a really great wardrobe for it,
right?
And then going from there, and that obviously comes from my fashion background. Like, that's how I've always been trained to, I guess, design. So that's kind of our starting point. And then from there, like, bringing on the florist and talking to them about what they want. And I think it's really important on these shoots to collaborate with everybody in a way that they feel like they're also bringing their best foot forward, because they're also investing so much into these shoots. So we like to be really open with them about what they want to see and how they see the design board and what comes to mind. So it's very collaborative, and it's brainstorming sessions, and they usually involve wine. And yeah, it's a lot of fun.
So how, when a bride books with you and then they're using a florist, who's creating the design, or like how do you massage the relationship with that person?
That's a good question. I think it depends like on the client and also which investment they choose to have with us. So some of our investments don't include the design portion. So with clients like that, we let the florist take the lead. If it's a client that has chosen a full planning investment, we're really heavily involved in the design. So we'll create a full design proposal for them. You know, we'll have a full design meeting to talk about what they like, what they don't like, what they want to see, how they envision it, and then we put our spin on it. And our design proposals are pretty detailed. They're anywhere from 8 to 10 pages long.
Wow. Yeah.
And then we take that and we meet with the florist. So we begin to meet with florists. And I think it's hard sometimes, if you don't have that initial design meeting with a client, to then be able to suggest the right florist for them, not knowing what they're trying to execute. So I always like to have that meeting first and then help guide them to find a florist. So in the case that they come to us and they already have a florist booked, I like to see what they've proposed and get a sense of how the client feels of what they've proposed, and then I kind of build onto that, if that makes sense. We're very open to who we work with. Like obviously we have vendors that we're very comfortable with and that we work frequently with, but we aren't the kind of company that will turn away like any client because they're working with certain vendors. And I think it's a great way to just be, you know, this industry is small, very small, but also big, if that makes sense. You know, there's so many people that I haven't had the opportunity to work with, and so I think it's really exciting when we get the chance to do that.
So I'm a little bit excited here because you recently did a very cool wedding with Mr. Patrick Patterson.
I did.
Why don't you fill us in a little bit about how you ended up with that wedding, first of all, and then we'll kind of go from there, because I'm intrigued.
Okay, so Sarah, his bride, was in a bridal party of one of our former weddings, and I actually spent the day with the girls. So she had a lot of questions about weddings, and I think that she had the sense that she was going to get engaged soon, so we really connected, and I was giving her, you know, a lot of information about different venues in the city and you know, our planning process and just recommendations. So I think that we set up a good bond there. And then when they got engaged, they reached out, and it was actually a very quick turnaround. So it was only about 6 months. So Patrick proposed to Sarah with the venue booked. Oh, wow. And the date already booked. So it was a very quick turnaround in that sense. I think maybe proposed January, February, and they got married in August. So, you know, we immediately dove in and started planning, and they're just a really great couple. They're a lot of fun. I only have good things to say about them, and they really trusted me, which was nice. It wasn't a lot of... there wasn't a lot of hesitation from their end about when I suggested things or you know, yeah. So they kind of gave me free rein in that sense, which was great.
And so which venue did they choose?
Casa Loma.
Casa Loma.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what kind of stuff were you working with in terms of design with Casa Loma for that wedding? So
they got married in the pavilion. And their ceremony was in the conservatory. And we were actually the first event to be able to do fireworks at Casa Loma.
Really?
Yes. So that was really exciting.
Okay, so why would Casa Loma ban fireworks prior to this?
So they have so many close residents. So right across the street, people live. Right? So I think it's different than a lot of downtown venues actually won't permit fireworks because of that reason, as opposed to places in Vaughan and Woodbridge and things, you know, venues that have a little bit more surrounding space. So it was a hard no at first. And I'm such a yes person. And it was very important to Patrick, and it was a surprise to Sarah.
Nice.
So I was like, I'm going to pull this off. You know, we're going to be the first people to do fireworks. Like, don't you worry. And it honestly took like 2 to 3 months of me harassing, for lack of a better word, the right people. And I worked with Mark at Air Magic, and I have to say he was incredible in helping me like make this happen. You know, we had to inform the fire department, the police department, like in case they were gonna all of a sudden receive a bunch of calls from people surrounding the castle. So it was pretty cool, and it felt like very rewarding to be able to pull that off for them. And Sarah was so surprised, and Patrick was thrilled. So it's moments like that that really make you remember why, you know, I do this.
So who did you have to convince? Was it the surrounding neighbors, or? It
was a lot of convincing for Casa Loma, for the owners of the property, as well as the city of Toronto.
Okay.
We actually contacted somebody within that ward. And he was excited about the opportunity. So it was finally once we had reached him that we were able to get that letter of permission and the go-ahead. So
that's amazing.
Yeah. And it's a certain type of fireworks that had to be ordered to be set off in such a close proximity to houses. And
so how long did they run for? Because I know there's different time spans for fireworks.
It was about 5 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah, it was pretty special. And, you know, we'll either be the first and last or event to be able to have done that, or maybe, you know, set the way for other events. So either way, it was a cool experience. And yeah.
What's the cost for fireworks if you're like at a golf course?
It ranges.
What's the range?
I think anywhere from $3,000 to $10,000.
Depending on time and location?
Time, location, type of fireworks. There are those fireworks that you could, you know, write a name.
Oh, I haven't seen that before.
Heart, things like that, I think.
Okay, I like that.
Cost more, but
makes sense.
Yeah, typically in that range.
Okay. I did see online that you had a performer for Patrick's wedding.
Yes, they brought in.
Who did you bring?
A Grammy award-winning artist named Anthony Hamilton.
Cool.
Do you know him?
I don't.
You should listen to him. He's really, really amazing. It was exciting for me. I'm a fan of his music, so that was a really cool experience. And we contracted Soul Power to manage that booking. But it was interesting from my perspective to have, you know, we've brought in acts before, but never to that scale. So organizing like a full production schedule just for his team, and, you know, flights and hotels. And
that was you guys doing that?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So that was a project within a project, and it was a big learning experience for me, even like the legalities of flying in an artist from the States into Canada, things like that, you know, and customs, and how does that work. So I learned a lot in that regard.
I know that there's some weddings, like as of recent for myself and the team, that have like a non-disclosure agreement, which is called an NDA.
Yes.
For anyone who may not know that, but technically it just means you're not able to share contents from the wedding, or content from the wedding, or even information depending on who it is. And I think you guys also have some of those sometimes, some clients.
Yes, some clients definitely do, and they specifically did with certain vendors, not with us. They're a pretty open couple, and the wedding was all over social media as well, and Blog.to, I think, even posted about it too, which was cool. But yes, there are some clients that we take on that have full NDAs, and we're not allowed to share any images. We're not allowed to talk about anything in regards to the event. But we never do anyways when it comes to, even with, you know, any client. Like, we don't reveal too much information, especially when it comes to things like budget, guest list, anything like that. We're very private with our clients' confidentiality. So
there's always a piece of my heart that breaks a little bit, like, if I'm being real, because usually, like, there's just going to be something so beautiful content-wise that you would love to share with the world to see. But of course, we respect all decisions on NDAs because we get it. But there's always a piece of my heart.
So many that we can't share the photos of, and it is
sad.
heartbreaking.
Yeah. All right, Missy. So I love to ask some advice that you might have for both planners who are entering the industry, because I know there's a lot right now that are spreading their wings and leaving their jobs, and they're taking the plunge.
Yes.
And what kind of advice would you have for someone who's like going for the deep dive?
Yeah. We actually get so many people that want to meet with us for coffee and hear about how we started and what we do. And so my advice to them is always the same. It's just get yourself out there. When I started, I was going to every wedding event that I could possibly go to, whether or not it was wedding shows or I was hearing about, I don't know, the photographer exhibit or speaking, and I was just getting my name out there. And make yourself a business card, even if you don't have a business that just has your information on it, and give it out to people and have conversations, and you never know where that leads you. And that's, again, like, I was very lucky to be in an internship where I met other people within the industry, and I made those relationships, and I was able to carry them over into my next role. So I think that's super important, and that would be my biggest advice. Just get yourself out there.
Get out there, folks.
Get out there. Do your thing.
And what about for our lovely brides who are teetering on the idea of getting a planner or not getting a planner?
Even if you just have someone to do the day of.
Right.
Honestly, I don't just say this because it's my world, obviously. It's what I do. But I don't know how people have a wedding without at least somebody on the day of to manage. Like the things that we have to, I think every planner can actually speak to this, but no matter how much planning you do leading up to the event, there will always be things that happen on the day of where you have to make decisions and be flexible, and things might not go according to the timeline or the plan, and to not have that one person that's responsible for dealing with that just doesn't make sense to me.
Somebody needs to be held.
Yeah, like you don't,
otherwise it's yourself.
Exactly. You want your guests and your friends and your family to also be able to enjoy. And you put so much time and investment into the day, like why not take that extra step of having that person just to alleviate that stress for you? So important. Your next here's an idea for you, Corinne. Your next podcast should be like horror stories that happen at weddings, because it's it's inevitable. Like what happens when the bus breaks down at the side of the road, or your linens don't show up, or the wrong ones show up, or who's dealing with that, right?
So can you give us one horror story before you leave?
Oh my gosh, there's
so many. Did a bus break down?
I actually did have that happen to me. Yeah, it was a vintage car. Okay. So my bride and her mom were from their getting ready location heading to the church for the wedding. And I was trailing behind the car because we left at the same time. And I see the vintage car now like putt, 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 and like pulling over at the side of the highway. Like, what is happening, So immediately like went into planner mode, and the rest of the bridal party was being brought over with a sprinter. So I called that driver and I said, you're going to have to circulate and actually come back and pick up the bride, because they were just in front of the vintage car. And I said, you're going to have to come back and circulate and pick up the bride and the mom, because they're at the side of the highway. So I was like, am I going to have to take them in my car? Like, that's not very elegant. There's like boxes back here, like so many things that we have for the day. And I was like, oh, so that's actually what ended up happening, and it all worked out, and they got there and it was fine. But things happen. It's life. And
it's a good thing you were trailing the car, because
I know.
A lot of times brides are not carrying their phones on a wedding day.
No, that's very true.
And so
it's very true. I thought about that. Yeah, it happens. It's life, It's inevitable, and I think just having that person to deal with it is so important.
It's pretty key.
So that's my advice to brides. Hire a planner. Yeah, and also just like enjoy the day. Take it all in. I tell all my brides, put your phone away. I'm sure you've had planners on the show that have said that. Like it's goes by so quickly. So I think to just take that moment, and even during your ceremony, look out into look out at your guests, acknowledge everybody that's there for you and celebrating your love, and take that moment during your first dance to do the same thing, and just be present. Like, I'm huge on that. Those moments are so beautiful, and the reason that you do it all, like, you could throw the best party ever, but if you're not taking it all in and absorbing it, like, what's the point?
Okay, one last question
Okay.
that spins off from this, because I'm curious to know from your perspective. So the first dance happening after the grand entrance or to kick off the dance party, what do you usually suggest? Because I know what I prefer in video worlds, but
What do you prefer in video worlds?
so for me, and in video worlds, I love when it is the grand entrance and we go right into the first dance. For me, I feel as though this is when you have the most attention from everybody in the room.
Absolutely.
Everybody's not on the tequila at this point, so they're still, into it.
Yeah.
Nobody's in the bathroom, that kind of thing. This is the moment. So from a video standpoint, that's what I enjoy the most. But from a planner standpoint,
Yes.
what do
I
you think
agree.
works the best?
I agree entirely, wholeheartedly. Like, do it immediately. You have everyone's attention. It's exactly that. Like, you took the words out of my mouth. By the time that dancing's about to begin, everybody's now probably experienced some type of sit-down dinner. They're eager to get up. They're eager to move, explore, be in the washroom, be at the bar. And then to ask them all to, like, sit down and be present and enjoy your first dance doesn't always go according to plan. So I'm really big on doing it right away. It's also the first dance. So in my opinion, do it first. Do it before your parent dances, if any, and do it right away while you're still fresh and you have everyone's attention.
True.
So
I loved having you here.
thank you for having me. It was
And
so fun.
it's so nice to sit and chat with you. To end off, I would like you to address the audience and ask them a question. Anything you might be curious about.
Yeah, I think I'd like to know, actually, like, if you have another planner on the show, I would love to know how much involvement they have in the bride's styling, so fashion choices. Because I find, like, I do have a select amount of brides and grooms that want us to be involved in that selection.
Oh, cool.
So, like, do you prefer a black tux or a navy suit, or what do you think of these pocket squares? And then we have other clients that just completely choose to do that on their own. So I think I'd be eager to know, like, how much they involve, like, styling within their design of the overall wedding.
From the fashion lady.
Yeah, from the fashion backgrounds.
Cool. All right.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for coming in.
Thank you for having me anytime.
Please come back and sit.
I will.
At any
Maybe
point.
we'll bring the whole team in next
I think it's
time.
a good idea.
All four of us.
I would love to have all of you in.
That would be wild.
I know.
We'd have to have some wine available.
Oh, there'll be wine. There'll be 2 or 3 bottles.
Perfect.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you. Cheers.
Cheers. All right, guys, that is it for season 2, episode number 11 of the VIP Collective. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please feel free to give us one of these. And you can also hit subscribe so you don't miss next Wednesday's episode. As always, guys, thanks for watching. We'll see you again next week on the VIP Collective.